How's it going, elementary administrators and teachers? My name is Justin Robichaux with the Math Department and the Division of Academics. And today we're going to walk through our math elementary data following the Interim 2 ANET assessment. You have access to this presentation by using the bit.ly found on this page, bit.ly/ESMathData Feb 23. And there's also going to be a QR code on subsequent slides. So today's agenda, what does our math data say about following the Interim 2 and kind of leading into the Interim 3? So we have that Interim 2 data now, what do we do with it? And then after we look at the data, what are our next steps? And then how can we be preparing for Interim 3 that's coming up? And then we'll take a look at some Dreambox data that we've accumulated during the calendar year of 2023. As stated before, you have access to this presentation using the bit.ly or scanning that QR code found on your screen. So keeping with our district's motto this year, nothing is impossible. We wanted to go through to show you ways that we can improve our ANET 3 data while also looking ahead to the LEAP 2025. Our instructional focus for this school year from DOA is to pay a heavy emphasis on improving planning, implementation, as well as assessing and adjusting. And the focus for the math department is to work on implementing consistent reasoning and problem-solving skills throughout our district. So let's go ahead and get into the data from Interim 2. The average score in third grade was 48%, with our standard of deficit being 3.0A.8. In fourth grade, our average score was 41%. with the standard of deficit being 4.083. And in fifth grade, our average score was a 48, with our standard of deficit being 5MD1. And we'll kind of give you some tools in a second to improve and to work through those standards. All right, so let's jump into the items that teachers, administrators can use moving forward to do a few things. To look at Interim 2 and make improved instructional decisions, as well as look ahead to Interim 3. So the first thing, and again, hopefully you have access to this document. If you didn't, rewind this video, find the QR code or the bit.ly, that way you have access to it because all of these links are live. These are the three things we're really going to be focusing on today with a heavy emphasis on this standards-based data because that's going to kind of be the portal to getting into everything else. But we're going to go ahead and look at our district level standards-based data. And you've probably seen this document before. We've used it a couple times to illustrate how we are doing on each individual standard. But as we kind of go through this process year after year, we're identifying areas that we can improve it. And so I'm going to walk you through some of the improvements, how to use it. That way you can see how it can fit in your school site and go from there. So the first thing is it automatically defaults to third grade. I'm going to draw your attention to the bottom. This is where you will have tabs for every grade level. So this is an elementary specific video. So really the focus would be on third, fourth, and fifth, and maybe your school has a sixth, seventh, or eighth grade as well if you're a combo school. So all you do is you click on that grade level and it will take you to the data sets for that grade. Keeping in line with what we normally do, we'll stick with one grade level to make this a very easy conversation since we're talking to so many different groups of people. And we'll just go over what this document has to offer. So the first thing that you'll notice is that we have columns for standards that were assessed on Interim 2. We have the percent correct from the district on Interim 2 for that standard. We also have a column that identifies which questions on the test correlated to that standard. We have in the fourth column, when was the standard addressed in our Eureka curriculum? And then the final column is the impact on LEAP, identifying if it's a major content, additional, or a supporting content standard. So let's focus on some of the hyperlinks to see how you can interact with this. So we'll focus right now on this first column that says 3MD2. So 3MD2 was a standard on this Interim 2 assessment for third grade. The average correct score was a 40%. The next number you'll see is a -5. That is the change from where that standard was last year on Interim 2 to where that standard was this year on Interim 2. Just as a reminder, this year we increased the size of our interim assessments to allow for more standards to be assessed. So just looking at third grade alone, you will see that the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 standards were assessed this year and last year. However, the final 4, there is no negative number or positive number, depending on if it was an increase from last year. So that means that those 4 standards were new additions to this year's assessment. So last year on Interim 2, we did not assess 3OA9 or NBT 1, 2, or 3. The other thing is, because it was an increase in the test, we also added some items possibly for the standards. So even though we saw a dip of 5% in 3MD2, that's not guaranteeing that last year the students saw the same exact questions. So last year, again, we were 5 percentage points higher on this standard. The second thing I want to draw your attention to is the questions 10 and 19. So how can we use that? One of the biggest keys to this process is identifying, do kids have an issue with the standard, or do kids have an issue with the actual question stem? So if I know that 3MD2 was taught on, or was assessed on questions 10 and 19, the easiest thing to do is to pull up the analysis guide. And again, you have access to that through the standards document that I just showed. This will break down the assessment that third grade students took. It will highlight the question number, question 2. It shows you the standard, and it gives you some information around the question. It gives you some common misconceptions for that question. But let's just go to question 10, since that's the question that we said was associated with that standard that we were looking at. So here it is, question 10, 3MD2. This gives teachers and administrators an opportunity to look at the question with the standard of deficit and identify reasons behind why students did well or not so well. And it allows us to then use these final 40 days of instruction before the LEAP test to make informed decisions around how we want to reassess, provide intervention, small group, whatever have you, to make sure that once we get to the LEAP test that we're able to master these standards. So again, it'll show you the correct answer, and it will also give you some distractors as well as maybe some reasons behind it. So again, this is a very good tool to have. And just as a reminder, it is found on the standards-based form that was linked in this presentation. It is also on our math resources, and I'll show you exactly where to find that later as well. And it's in the column that says questions on test. And again, if you're a 4th grade teacher, you have it on your 4th grade document. If you're a 5th grade teacher, you have the 5th grade one on your document there for easy access. So the next part that I really want to draw your attention to is we neglected to even kind of discuss what 3MD2 is. And so if one of the alterations and changes we made for this interim 2 was we know that we've got a very quality document in our standards at a glance, which identifies what the standard looks like from the state of Louisiana. It also identifies in the companion document what it looks like, and it also identifies from the achievement level descriptors what that item should look like on the LEAP test. So by clicking on 3MD2, it opens up a new resource for us, which is our standards at a glance document. Again, this can also be found through our bit.ly, but for ease, we've linked it here as well. And for 3MD2, we have access to the companion document, which again, on the left-hand side, gives us the standard. And then in the middle, it goes over a few things. It goes over the component of rigor. It goes over a remediation standard, if there's one available. And then it also tells us which standards must be taught in advance in our 3rd grade curriculum. So for 3MD2, there are no standards in 3rd grade that need to be taught in advance to master this one. The second thing is it also gives teachers some examples. And then we have the achievement level descriptor, which we've talked about before. But again, this kind of illustrates what advanced level work looks like in this standard, what mastery level work, basic level work, and then anything below basic, approaching basic, or unsatisfactory. The final part, and this is the latest addition that we've got to this document, we've now identified every standard to have corresponding ANET released items. And this again can be used to make sure that students are having problems with the standard and not necessarily maybe the question. So by clicking on ANET released items for 3MD2, that will take you to a PDF file that we have downloaded, which has every released item from ANET concerning 3MD2. So you'll see this one, for instance, is 19 pages. Some of them vary in length depending on how many released items there are. And from this point on, you really can just start assigning some questions in a small group or however have you. This is done in paper-based form. If you would like to do it digitally, then by all means, you are more than welcome to go into ANET and you can take questions from 3MD2 and spit it out to your students that way so they can do it through ANET as well. So again, this is just one more resource that can be used for students on standards-based assessments. All right, so let's go ahead and get back out of this. Again, we're getting back out of the standards at a glance. We'll close down the analysis guide because we went through that, and we'll take us back to this page. And so again, this is the foundational piece. Now remember, when you get this document, there is nothing that says you can't make a copy of this, delete what we have, because again, this is district level data in column C. This may not be as important to you if your students did higher or lower than the district average. So you can do a few things. You can input your district, and again, your class data. Again, you want to make a copy of it first. Input your class data, and you can compare it to the district, or you can look up scores from last year at your school site and compare it to last year. But this column would again just show the percent correct on that standard. That way you have an idea of your standards of deficit, your standards of excellence, and things of that nature. Questions on the test, again, you would want to have that analysis guide open so you can start identifying question stems associated with that standard, the way that it was assessed. And then this column we didn't talk much about, but now we will, is when was the standard addressed? Now, the key to this is where you can really bring in Zurn. And again, I'll show you in a second, if you're not familiar with Zurn, how to kind of maybe navigate those waters. But this would allow you to assign Zurn mission and lessons directly to students that correlate to the standard of deficit, that would give them the Eureka lesson pretty much again on a digital platform and allow them to work through some of those ideas to make sure that they have mastered that standard. And again, we will have a document in a few seconds that kind of outlines how to assign those types of things for students. All right, so getting back into the presentation, again, that was our interim 2 EBR standards data. We have the same document for the first interim. We will create the same document for the third interim to have all those standards available for you. Another great tool is the Ldoe assessment guide. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with this because we have several videos that already go over it. But once you click on that, it will give you access to the most recent assessment guides for 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And then again, if you're a combo school, you have 6th, 7th, and 8th. By clicking on that, it will give you descriptors as to what students will see when we give the LEAP test in late April, early May. So it will go over test design, the types of tasks that students will see, the weight of the test, standards associated with those subcategories. So this would be a really great document to kind of guide you over these last 40 days to make sure that you're on the right path for the LEAP assessment. So again, that can be found in this presentation, but it can also be found through our bit.ly, bit.ly/EBR math resources, and there will be a link at the end of this presentation as well. I'm not going to go into too much detail with the companion document as well, because that was already identified on our standards at a glance document. All right, so what are our next steps? Well, we've been over a lot so far. We've been over a lot of different ways that we can identify standards of weakness and standards of strength, and then next steps. So from my calculations, if you're watching this video sometime around the Mardi Gras break, then we have around 40 days of instruction left before we get to the LEAP assessment timeline. So the big push now is, what can we do over these final 40 days to maximize our ANET 3 and our LEAP results? So the biggest thing are these items. Students should be taking end of module assessments on Illuminate. Remember, those are the end of module assessments that our department has created and put on Illuminate. They are designed to give you one more data set to help make informed decisions. They are very aligned to the standards found within each module, and they are aligned to the types of questions a student would see on the LEAP test. The other big thing is the pacing piece. It is imperative that we make sure that we stay on the pacing that we have constructed to ensure that all standards are covered prior to the LEAP test. Finally, using EBR math resources, and if I click on this, I believe it's going to take me, yep, takes us to our bit.ly, and this is again the bit.ly that I referenced earlier that has all of these documents. So this should be bookmarked somewhere if you are a math teacher, because this is really the one place that, as we put updated items, it's always going to go here because this is our portal. And so on here, you would have your bell ringers, again, first 5 minutes of every lesson, but most people understand that. Our anchor charts, if you're not familiar, anchor charts for every module. The showcase tasks, again, these are a wonderful resource to help with RDW, providing feedback to students, constructive responses, things of that nature. Standards at a glance document, we just referred to that in our previous document, but standards at a glance, if you just wanted to go here, it would have all of the standards at your disposal. So if you're a third grade teacher and you didn't want to get there using the standards from ANET, these are all the standards at a glance tied into third grade. So this is kind of like another area where if I'm a third grade teacher, you could just bookmark this third grade standards at a glance page and have easy access to that as well. So this is the area in which you would really want to make sure you dove into. And it's a lot of information. I'm not going to take away from that fact. But as you start to navigate and understand what the resources have, I think it will become a very easy idea to just visit this frequently, because the more I think you get into it, the more you'll see that there's a lot of things that can really help your students grow. So on that math resources page, again, we have the bell ringers, we have our showcase tasks, and then the standards at a glance document, which really helps teachers identify what the state is looking for in each standard. And the final thing, I can't stress this enough, is making sure that we're pulling strategic small groups, not just pulling small groups for the sake of it, but there's got to be a purpose behind it. Like, why are we pulling these kids to the back table? Is it because we want to work on 3MD2? If so, you can identify those ideas found within 3MD2 where it's found in Eureka, and you can assign Zurn lessons. You can pull some of those ANET released items. You can find where it was taught in Eureka and reteach that in a small group. So again, those are all ideas that I think would be the great foundational piece for how you pull a strategic small group. And as I said earlier, if you don't know how to assign Zurn lessons, and maybe that's something you want to get into, click on this hyperlink right here, and it will take you to exactly how you assign independent digital lessons through Zurn. If you still need assistance, please, please, please reach out to our department, and we would love to help. All right, so interim 2 is in the mirror. Let's now look ahead to interim 3. And so as a school, you're probably juggling remediation from interim 2, as well as looking ahead to interim 3. So we wanted to make sure we outfitted you with all the tools necessary to do whatever it is that your students need. So interim 3 starts March 13th and it runs through March 29th. On our bit.ly that we showed for the math department, there is a link to what I'm about to show you, but it's also linked right here with this picture. And this is our ANET EBR math resources. So you saw the standards document a second ago. That is found right here under our winter math standards. By clicking on that, it will take you to all the standards on how students did. The interim 3 component, though, which we identified right here as spring documents for the March 13th through the 29th, we've given you a few things. You have an interim preview agenda, you've got the scoring rubric, and then we'll stick with third grade because that's kind of where our conversation's been. But you also have the interim 3 look ahead document. This look ahead document gives you the descriptions of what students need to know, as well as the standards that students need to have mastered, because these are the standards that will be on the assessment. Clicking on any one of these standards will link you to our standards at a glance document, so you again have an idea of what that standard is looking for. So again, we hope that everything that you need to prepare your students for interim 3 is on this document. If you have any suggestions for how to improve any of the documents you've seen, by all means, please let us know, because we always want to continue to get better at providing you with the resources necessary to have our students grow. So again, this is our ANET EBR math document. It has past data sets as well as look ahead items. You have the winter one, but that's in our rear view mirror, as I said. So now it's all about this spring look ahead document. And that'll be the one that kind of guides our instruction for the next few weeks. All right, let's try to close some of these down. All right, so again, just utilize this preview document to ensure all standards for interim 3 are covered and mastered. All right, so we're going to wrap up the presentation today with just an overview around Dreambox to make sure that we're completing 5 lessons a week, again, which is the recommendation from the district and from Dreambox. Those 5 lessons can take anywhere from 45 to 75 minutes. Some reports that really will help guide your decision making and how it's being utilized. The usage report, again, that just shows the percentage of students that are logging into Dreambox during a period of time, as well as their weekly lessons accumulated. Dreambox Predictive Insight, if students are getting on regularly, this report will show how well they'll do on a state assessment. Dreambox says it has an 85% accuracy, and that report can only be pulled at the beginning of every month. And then the progress, that shows how much of Dreambox a student has completed in their grade level. It's only given once a month, and it's only released at the beginning of the month. So if you get in the habit of pulling that usage report weekly and then the DPI and progress at the beginning of every month, you'll be in a good shape. So let's talk about the top 10 Dreambox schools in the year 2023. So this is from January through February. These are the schools that are averaging the most lessons per week per student, and then also showing the average time spent on Dreambox per student. River Oaks is leading the way, averaging 7.8 lessons per week. Cedar Crest is in second, followed by Wildwood, Belfair Montessori, Woodlawn Middle, Broadmoor Elementary, Southeast Middle, University Terrace, Melrose, and rounding out the top 10 is Northeast Elementary. This breaks down by grade level. I'll be pretty quick with this. 85% of our students are using Dreambox in kindergarten, and then you have low to mid 90s for first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grade. All right, so what are our next steps? Our next steps are to continue monitor pacing. I understand we get behind at points, but the biggest thing is that we have to make informed decisions about how we get back on pace, because we can't get to a point in April where we're 4 weeks behind and we just make the decision that we're not going to teach the last 4 weeks. So that's why it's always best to make informed decisions leading up to that point to ensure that we do cover all the standards that students need. Let's make sure we're getting prepped for interim 3. The window to take the test is March 13th through the 29th. And then let's continue to utilize Dreambox and Zurn as supplemental math resources to help our students. In closing, I just wanted to thank all of our math coaches, our math content trainers, our math teachers, and our school administrators for the hard work that you have put in so far this year. We are getting close to the finish line, and these last 40 days can make a huge difference in how our students do on the interim 3 as well as the LEAP assessment. All of our information for contact is on this site. My email. If you're elementary, then your main point of contact is going to be your math coach, as well as Miss LaTrenda Knighton. Her contact is there. For middle and high school, that's going to be Miss Debbie Roberts at middle school and Miss Ashlyn Cage at high school. And then, as I said before, if you need access to our math website, it can be found right here as well. Well, I wanted to thank everybody for watching this video, and also as well, thank you for everything that you do to make EBR a great place to learn and work.